Good morning, Hundredfold. This is Doug, and welcome to Sundays with Doug, where we are going to be talking through some Bible concepts about the seed and the sower. But what we're trying to do is come alongside of every one of our members and be on this journey together and encourage them and give them the tools needed to make this journey a good one. And it's also about looking to find our true identity, and by doing so, finding God's true identity. That is our purpose for being here. So thanks for joining us on this study this morning. And what we're doing is asking you or inviting you to embark on this journey together, because when we come alongside of each other, it makes our journey that much better, easier, and happier. So okay, so we are also memorizing some 10 truths. And what we're asking people to do is to take this list, which you can find on our website. And these are 10 truths that really represent the way that Jesus lived his life. And if you look at this list, it does describe the way Jesus lived. And 1 John 4:17 says, "As Jesus is, so I am in this world," which is one of my key verses. And when I started looking at this several years ago, I found that verse and says, well, if we're living the life that Jesus lived, then what life did he live? And if you look at these truths, you'll find that he was always at the right place at the right time, and that everything that his hand touched prospered, right? He healed people, he came across people, and he was always healing people. And basically everything his hand touched prospered. He always had unlimited possibilities and resources. So if that was true for him, then these are true for us. So I'm asking that everyone take the time to memorize these, apply them to your life, and also to meditate upon them. Because as you meditate upon them, they sink into your subconscious mind, and there is power in our subconscious mind, especially when our spirit and God's spirit unite there. Then all things are possible. So I'm hoping you guys are making good progress on memorizing the 10 truths. And the reason we're starting in Mark chapter 4 is because in there, verse 13 in Mark chapter 4, Jesus calls this parable, the one we're going to be studying today, the parable of all parables. So and he basically says, if you don't understand this parable, how will you understand all the parables? So we want to dig into this and make sure we completely understand it, how it applies to our life, and also how it applies to the other parables that he spoke. Because Jesus said that his entire ministry, he only spoke in parables. So that's why we're digging in and starting with Mark chapter 4. And these are some reminders from last week, because we're talking about the seed and the sower. So the sower is you. So this is just a reminder that you're the one that's sowing. And in the parable, Jesus doesn't describe who that person is. It doesn't say that he sowed, she sowed, they sowed, God sowed. It just says the sower sowed. So this applies to all of us. And the seed that we're sowing is God's word. It's your words, your thoughts, which is in you. So think of a thought as a seed. And as you plant that seed in your mind, when it drops down into your heart is when you truly believe it. And then the seed starts to grow. But what is the condition of our heart, which Jesus describes as our soul? What is the condition of that? And we'll be digging into that later this morning. Because the soil is your faith. Without faith, it's impossible to please God. So we need to understand what that faith is, what it looks like, and how to develop it. And again, we'll be talking about that this morning as well. All right, so with that said, we're going to be digging into Mark 4, the seed in the soil, and this is considered part 1. Before I start that, for those that are online, did you have the opportunity to go onto the website? Did you find that as being simple? Going to thehundredfoldjourney.com and pulling down the worksheet, the 10 truths, and also finding last week's study. Were you able to do that?
I did, but it was just operator error on my part because I didn't realize there was a second sheet to the worksheet.
Gotcha. Okay.
But I
Yeah.
found it.
Yeah, you found it. Okay. Great. So the idea there is to make it simple for people to go online, download it. You can print it. It's in a PDF format, and then fill in the answers. So that's what we're going to be covering this morning, is that worksheet as well as this presentation. So with that said, I'll go ahead and read the parable of the sower. And again, he began to teach by the sea, and a great multitude was gathered to him, so that he got into a boat and sat in it on the sea. And the whole multitude was on the land facing the sea. Then he taught them many things by parables, and said to them in his teaching, Listen, behold, a sower went out to sow. Again, it doesn't describe who or what. It just says a sower went out to sow. And it happened, as he sowed, some seed fell by the wayside, and the birds of the air came and devoured it. Some fell on stony ground, where it did not have much earth, and immediately it sprang up, because it had no depth of earth. But when the sun was up, it was scorched, and because it had no root, it withered away. And some seed fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked it, and it yielded no crop. But the other seed fell on good soil, and yielded a crop that sprang up, increased, and produced, some 30-fold, some 60-fold, and some 100-fold. And he said to them, He who has ears to hear, let him hear. So again, this verse 8 there, some 30, some 60, some 100-fold. And where we want to be is in the 100-fold. We want to have a crop that produces or that yields 100-fold. But when he was alone, those around him with the 12 asked him about the parable. And he said to them, To you it has been given to know the mystery of the kingdom of God, but to those who are outside, all things come in parables, so that seeing they may see and not perceive, and hearing they may hear and not understand, lest they should turn and their sins be forgiven. So what's interesting about this section here is just before he describes what the parable is, we have the ability to come to God in a quiet time and ask him questions, and he's more than happy to answer them. So when it says that when he was alone, and those around them with the 12 asked him about the parable. So we should always feel comfortable to ask God, to pray, to meditate upon these things, and he will answer them for us. So never be shy about, or even asking friends or a 100-fold, what this means. And what's interesting here, it says, seeing they may see and not perceive, and hearing they may hear and not understand. So what that is talking about is, think of our 5 senses and the sight, hearing, taste, touch, and smell. These are all the 5 senses. And what Jesus is suggesting here is that when we see with our physical eyes, or we hear with our physical ears, sometimes that's not the truth. What the truth is what we see with our the spiritual eyes, or we hear with the spiritual hearing. And when we see the turmoil that's around us, and we hear the bad news and so forth, and we allow that to come in and change our thoughts and make us anxious and worried and fearful, what Jesus is saying here is we shouldn't, that causes us to fall, and sins. What that means, sin is just the fallen mind. It's the false thinking. It's thinking or seeing and hearing through the physical rather than the spiritual. And as we listen to the story, we're thinking physical. What does this mean? A seed and and we're so adept into visualizing what that might look like. without looking at the spiritual side of it, because this is not a physical story. It's not about a physical person planting a physical seed. There's a spiritual lesson. And this is what he's trying to waken us up to seeing and hearing with our spiritual senses, not our physical senses. And then he said to them, don't you understand this parable? How then will you understand all the parables? So this is why we're calling this the parable of parables, because if we don't understand this, then we're not going to understand everything. And we'll see as the weeks progress just how important understanding the seed in the soil and the condition of our heart is, because it is vitally important. The sower sows the word, and these are the ones by the wayside where the word is sown. When they hear Satan, or the fallen one, he comes immediately and takes away the word that was sown in our hearts. These likewise are the ones sown on stony ground, who, when they hear the word, immediately receive it with gladness, and they have no root in themselves, and so endure only for a time. Afterward, when tribulation and persecution arises for the word's sake, immediately they stumble. Now these are the ones sown among the thorns. They are the ones who hear the word, and the cares of this world, the deceitfulness of riches, and the desires for other things, entering in, choke the word, and it becomes unfruitful. But these are the ones sown on good ground, those who hear the word, accept it, and bear fruit, some 30-fold, some 60, and some 100-fold. So as you can see, Jesus takes a story that talks about seeds and thorns and so forth, and it's all in parabolic language. And it's not until we understand that all of this is parabolic. It's the seed is the word, and he mentions heart and the condition of the heart. So you can see that we can't understand this through our physical senses, the eyes and the ears. We have to go deeper into the spiritual. And that's what Jesus is doing here with this explanation. All right, so let's dig in. So these are the four soils, and we'll dig into each one. All right, so the first one is, we're going to go through each one, and we're going to ask the question, what's the soil location? So if we go to our worksheet, in fact, let me go to that. You will see, and you can still see my screen, right?
Yes.
So, these are the questions that we'll be answering, and I put them into our presentation here. But we're going to be talking through, some of these questions, not all of them, but some of them. But so hopefully you have that sheet in front of you, and we will go through that. So the first question for us is, what is the soil location? So where is the location of this first soil and where the seed was dropped? Can you answer that?
Well, it was along the path, right? So
Correct.
just
Exactly. Yeah, it was along the path. And what was the end result?
blown away, birds ate it, Satan brushed it away.
Exactly. Yep. And what was the cause? What caused that to happen?
That one I'm not really sure of.
Yeah. So I want to use the word allowed. So we allowed Satan, the fallen mind, to come and other people, birds representing other people, just to take that word out of us, right? And there wasn't much depth in there because it was on the pathway. So that's one of those thoughts that might come into our mind, and it would drop, but we wouldn't necessarily believe it, wouldn't be true for us. And as circumstances and situations, would just pop out. So it would be something that would not last for very long. So that's soil condition number one. And remember, the soil that we're talking about is the heart, the condition of the heart. So then, so these were the answers that I had. So they hear the word, but the birds ate it. Satan, the fallen mind, false identity. It was lifted out, and so it was taken away. All right, so then the second soil, what's the location of the second soil?
Well, in rocky places,
Right, yep. And what was the end result?
um, well, the seed sprouted quickly, but it never took root. So it just withered away. The sun
Yep.
burned it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because there wasn't much root. And if you'll remember last week's video, that root needs to go down, and it needs to find that base, if you will. It branches out underneath the ground so that it stands firm. Um, and since this was stony ground, that wasn't able to happen. And then what was the cause of this not being able to grow?
There was no roots. The roots
Right.
didn't take hold.
Right. And then what else?
The shallow soil.
Right. So it was shallow soil, and then what happened?
It withered.
And why did it wither?
Doug, I don't know.
Yeah, so down at the bottom there. So there was tribulation, persecution,
Oh,
and then immediately they stumble. Right? So
yeah.
again, the visual is that video from last week where the roots went down, and they're like feet, if you will. They're like anchors that the seed starts to grow, so that when it pops out and pops through, and then the tribulation, let's call it, the wind and so forth, but in this case, it's the tribulation. It'll knock it over because the roots aren't deep. It's in rocky soil, and then immediately it falls. So, but it's the tribulation, it's the persecution. You hear other people say, why are you doing that stuff? That's silly, and you could think of 1,000 scenarios, but we need to make sure that our roots are strong, and this one obviously didn't, right? Because they allowed that to happen and the roots did not go deep. All right, so let's go on to soil number 3, excuse me. So the location of this one?
The rocky soil.
Nope, the next one, soil 3.
Oh, the thorny soil.
Yeah, there we go.
Thorns. Yeah.
Yep. So the location is they found some good soil, but then they were surrounded by thorns. And what was the end result?
They were choked. The seeds were choked.
Exactly, it was choked out. And what caused that to happen?
Well, the thorns grew around it, so everything else got in the way and just choked it out.
Exactly. So now here it says the cares of this world, the deceitfulness of riches, and the desire for other things choked it out. So what do you think those things might be in our world that would choke that out? Can you give me some examples?
I would say negativity.
Yep.
Sins. Getting too caught up in things we shouldn't be caught up in, maybe.
Okay. Now, what about the deceitfulness of riches? What do you think that means? I mean, is it okay to be rich, or maybe we need to be poor, and that view's better with God if we're poor? Or what do you think that means, deceitfulness of riches?
That's always been a struggle for me my whole life, so I don't really know how to answer that. I would say off the top of my head, greed.
Yeah. So God wants to be our source of everything. And it all comes out of love. So if we think that riches or a relationship or a job is where we find fulfillment. That's all. That will cause us to stumble and fall, because all of that is temporary. So the deceitfulness of riches is thinking that if I just have enough money, if I just buy that house, if I just get married to this person, then my life will be fantastic. So instead of pursuing the spiritual, you're pursuing the physical. And what God is saying here is that when we start pursuing those other things, then it chokes out God's word. It chokes out the spiritual, rather than, the 10 truths, right? Where you're always at the right place at the right time and all my needs are constantly met and I have unlimited possibilities and resources. The spiritual side says, I can rest and know that all of those needs are met. The physical would look at that and say, oh no, I can't trust that. I need to make sure that I have this amount of money. I need to pursue this relationship. And all of that is coming from a state of lack. I need, I want, I desire. It's coming from me in order to fill me and make me feel, I'm not sure worthy is the right word, but feel fulfilled inside of me. And what God is saying, no, you don't need any of that. I am the one that provides that fulfillment. I love you unconditionally. It's not what you do or what you say. I can fulfill all of that. And for us to be able to rest in that. And what this seed does is he gets really close, right? It actually starts to grow and it builds, it's building and growing and actually sprouts. But then all these cares of the world come against it and say, no, you're not good enough and you need more, you need this, you need that. And then it chokes it out. So the voice of God can't be heard and you can't see it because it's being choked out by all this other stuff. That makes sense?
Yeah.
So what I'm suggesting is riches and all those things that I just described in the physical, you can have all those things, but it's the mindset as to the reason why you want to have that. If it's out of lack, because you're lacking something and you need this to fulfill yourself, then it's just going to fall over. But if those things come into your life, but you don't need them because you are already fulfilled, and in a sense, they will be attracted to you. You'll be at the same vibration as those things, and they'll be attracted to you. And again, all your needs are constantly met. You have unlimited possibilities and resources, all those 10 truths, those will be true for you, but you're not out, grabbing for them. They just come to you automatically because of who you are. So you're not reaching out with your own hand to get it. And that's what Adam and Eve did, right? God gave them everything, gave them the whole garden, gave them all the fruits of the tree that they could eat from, except for that one. And that was to show that his love for them and their love for God. But they decided to reach out with their own hand to get something that they already had, which was God within them.
Mm.
All right. So then we come upon soil number 4. So the soil number 4, what's the location of this soil?
That's the good ground.
That's the good ground, exactly. And what's the end result?
It takes hold, it bears the fruit.
Yep.
It grows.
Yep. Some 30, some 60, some 100-fold. But what's the cause? What allowed or caused this to grow?
I would say our belief and our openness to it.
Yep. What's the key word I mean, it's so simple. It's kind of crazy. Actually, there's two words, but what are the two words that cause this seed to grow?
Accept it, love.
Right? Accept it. And then the one just before that is heard. They heard the word.
Oh, heard it.
Yeah. So two very simple things. So hearing it, you hear it, it comes in through the ear, goes into the brain, you hear it, you know it, you accept it, and then boom, it drops down to the heart. And the heart, the condition of the heart is good. It's good soil, which means that there's faith there, that you agree with that word. You agree with that seed that's been planted. For example, all my needs are constantly met. Let's call that a seed. All my needs are constantly met. It drops, right? And then you know that beyond a shadow of a doubt. You know that for sure. But then all of a sudden a lack comes in your life. Let's just say you lose your job. I'll just take the extreme. Are you going to trust that all your needs are constantly met and rest even though you just lost your job? So the physical eye would see, oh, I lost my job. You know, life is over. I don't know how I'm going to survive. I've got all these bills, whatever. But the truth is, all your needs are constantly met, and then you can rest in that. So which truth are you going to believe? Are you going to believe the spiritual truth, or are you going to believe what you see with your physical eyes? And when we see with our spiritual eyes what that truth is and we rest in it, then that plant will start to grow and all of our needs will be constantly met, because you're always in the right place at the right time. And God has granted you favor in the sight of those around you. So you're not worried about getting another job, because all of those truths are true for you. So as your faith builds, as you start to see or experience these things in your life, then honestly it becomes easier. I'm not saying like right away that, okay, tomorrow if I lose my job, I've got all this faith. It develops over time, just like a tree. Those roots have to go down, they have to spread out so that you can build a foundation. And that goes through experience. So as you experience God each and every day in your life, moment by moment, this is where the 21 days of gratitude, the 21 days of identity, our happiness challenge, as we're developing these things in our lives, then our spiritual eyes and our spiritual ears open up and we hear him clearer and we see him clearer than ever before. And I can speak, personal testimony of many things, daily things that happen where he's always working. So when something dramatic happens like that, because of that foundation that's been building and growing and getting stronger and stronger, I can stand firm even through difficulties. Yes, it may bend, but it won't break. That makes sense?
Yes.
All right, good. All right, so again, these are the 4 soils, and our focus is obviously on the good soil and not allowing circumstances and situations. In fact, that's another truth. Circumstances don't matter, only state of being matters. So the first 3 are all circumstantial. It's all, what's happening around me. It's all external. It's all in the physical. And the 4th soil is in the spiritual. All right, so I may have already answered this question, but I'll ask it. What makes the good soil good? So that's a question for us. What makes the good soil good? That's question number 3 in your worksheet.
Just hearing it and accepting his word.
Yeah, and it's crazy at just how simple that is. It's just hearing it and accepting it and allowing that seed to drop, and then just and believing it. And then what makes the bad soil bad?
Just the opposite.
Right. Yeah, it's not believing, it's not trusting, it's not resting, which means that, you know, like the bird, you know, that seed will be taken away, or it's just not deep enough, or it'll get choked out by circumstances and situations. Now, how do you know when the seed is in good soil in your own life?
For me, it's like an aha moment.
Yeah.
Something will hit and I'll be like, oh, and I could feel it like all through me. Like, yeah, like, why didn't I see this sooner? But yeah, an aha moment for me.
That's good. That's good. Have you had one recently by any chance that you'd be willing to share? If not, you know, but was there an aha moment recently?
I had a lot actually just this week,
Oh,
and
nice.
one being this morning when I realized there was a second sheet to the
Ah,
worksheet.
right.
And it was, what was the question? Um, what fruit is produced that reflects the good soil? Just kind of jumping ahead.
Yep.
But when I read those verses that you had read that were in there, that was like what I'd been looking for all week, actually for months. But this past week, I just felt like I was doing a lot of work looking for those answers. And then it's like, oh my God, there it is. It's right there.
There you go. Awesome. Well, I just got tingles thinking about that. That's awesome. So what happened in the spiritual in that moment is, think of, again, I go back to that video that I shared last week with that little picture of that little root going down. So what happened at that moment, the aha moment, was that root just went 1 inch deeper, let's say, or 1 foot deeper. So now you have a strong hold on that, a foot, if you will, to hold you up. So that's awesome. The thing
Yeah.
I like, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, it really was awesome. It was an awesome feeling.
Yep. Yep. And that's the way God does it. Because, and one of the 10 truths, you're always in the right place at the right time.
Mhm.
So what that meant is that the second you saw that was exactly when you needed to see it. Wasn't last week, wasn't, you know, last month, it wasn't last year. Right at that moment is when you needed to hear that. Because you were ready. You were ready.
Yeah.
The other way I like to answer this question is, how do you know when the seed is in the good soil? Is when you view or react to circumstances differently. So let's just say that today, you know, today you lost your car keys. I'll just use a simple example. So 6 months ago, you might have been freaking out, like, and just going around the house, pulling your hair out, saying, I can't believe I lost my keys. I always lose my keys. Where do my keys go? This always happens to me. But then today, the way you react to that is you got that seed in you, and you're always in the right place at the right time. You have unlimited possibilities and resources. There's a calmness to you where you say, all right, I may have misplaced them, and I'm sure I'm going to find it. And you come to a calm. You don't react the same way you did before. And then sure enough, you find your keys. They were there all the time. So the statement is that you react differently to the circumstances or situations in your life differently than you used to. That's how you know that seed has taken root in you, as you physically see it in the change in your thoughts and your reactions to things around you. So in what ways are you nourishing the spiritual seed God has planted in your life? Going to question 9. So are there things that you're doing to nourish that seed in your life? And if so, what are those things? And
Well,
I'll, yep, go ahead.
I'm trying to do it through gratitude and just being more observant to the breadcrumbs or the whispers that God sends me.
Yes.
Because really, I need him to scream at me sometimes, but I'm trying to listen for the whispers. So,
Yes. Yes. Um, I really like what you said about gratitude. Gratitude, gratitude is like putting on a pair of glasses that then opens a world that you hadn't seen before. It's always been there, but gratitude opens it up to you. Because when you're looking for things to be grateful for, you'll find things to be grateful for. And then the more you look, the more you find. And the more you find, you realize that this life is amazing and God does supply all your needs. And you just get more grateful and life just becomes easier and simpler. And even then it rolls into even the more difficult things. And I know the 21 days of gratitude, they talk about, finding those hurtful relationships in your past and difficult people and difficult events and going through that hard work and changing the story as to what you thought it was and looking at it through gratitude. And then all of a sudden you see, wow, that wasn't as bad as I thought, or it was pretty bad, but this is what I've learned from it. So gratitude changes everything. So I'm really glad to hear that you're implementing that because that is very foundational. Yep. And then of course you showing up here on Sunday morning, that's a way to nourish that seed. And then of course Facebook the hundredfold with our challenges and such, and just kind of a reminder on those posts. So I congratulate you on your journey and the things that you're doing. Yeah, that's awesome. And this is what ends up happening is like newborn babies long for the pure milk of the word, so that by it you may grow in respect to salvation. So it's like that newborn that just wants the milk. It wants more. It just savors it. It loves it, and that's what God's word does when it's planted. It's just we want more. We want more. Uh-oh, a bus just started. Can you hear that?
no.
Okay, good. It's really loud, but I'm glad you can hear it. And then what fruit is produced that reflects the good soil? And I think this is what you alluded to. Is this the Galatians you were looking for?
Yes, that was it. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. So these are the and notice the word fruit is not plural, but it's singular. And what that means is that when that seed is planted and it starts to grow, the fruit, all of these will become evident in our life. It's not love, then joy, then peace. It happens all at once. But some might be 30, some might be 60, some might be 100-fold. Right? So as your tree starts to grow, it'll become more and more evident. And then of course Colossians, so that you will walk in a manner worthy of the Lord, to please him in all respects, bearing fruit in every good work and increasing in the knowledge of God, strengthened with all power according to his glorious might, for the attaining of the steadfastness and patience joyously. So again, these are all fruits that will come out of this good soil from our heart. So now we go into the 30, 60, 100-fold response. And what the difference between the 30, 60, and 100-fold is the question that we ask. The good soil asks, how good is God? And the way you answer that determines your yield. So is God really that good that if I lose my job, that I can still rest and know that all my needs are constantly met? Is God really that good? Does he really love me that much? Is my identity that I'm his bride, his chosen, that I'm blessed, I'm holy, I'm blameless? Is that really true? Did God really do that just for me? The way you answer that question will determine your yield, whether it's 30, 60, or 100. And what we're suggesting at 100-fold is, yes, he is that good. In fact, he's bigger, better, more loving than anything we could have imagined. And here's the different responses. So the 30-fold, those individuals tend to still live out of the scene created, and they're living out of the body, and they still live out of their senses, and they still yield 30-fold. So what I'm suggesting is that they still have faith, but they still live out of their senses. So there's still crop that gets produced, but it's just not as much because they still react to what they see and what they hear. And it's works based. It's everything that I got to do. I got to do this. I got to go to church more. I got to read my Bible more. I got to, fast and do all of this. It's all work based. It's what I need to do in order to be. And then the 60-fold, they're a little bit more spiritual, we should say. They do live from the seen, but they also live from the unseen. So they understand these truths, and they're also based on spiritual gifts and talents. So the 60-fold believe that God empowers people, specific people, and they do certain tasks. But it's all, again, it's work based. It's things that they need to do in order to be. And the picture on the right there is this guy that is strapped to a bungee cord, and the bungee cord is connected to a pole, and he's running as fast as he can, doing all these works, trying to be the good guy, just work based, because he feels that the more he works, the better he's going to get, the more fruit he's going to bear because he's working hard. God's got to bless me because I'm doing all these things. It's all work based. But what does that bungee cord do? When you get a certain distance, it gets harder and harder and harder and harder. And then all of a sudden, zoom, it pulls you back. And it pulls you back to God is not that faithful. These truths can't be believed on. God, forgive me. I'm sorry I sinned. I fell short. Forgive me, and I'll do better next time. I mean, all those are the words of 30 and 60-fold. Trying to be good enough so that God would bless them. But they're never good enough. In their mind, they're never good enough. So that bungee cord always pulls them back. So then the last one is what we're calling 100-fold. And this is where we're living out of the unseen and based solely on the word, on the promises of God. All my needs are constantly met. I'm always in the right place at the right time. Everything my hand touches prospers. I have unlimited possibilities and resources. And what's the position of this person? It's rest, because we're living out of the spirit. It's not work-based. Now, is God that good where he will bless me even though I rest? Think about the Garden of Eden, right? God created paradise. Paradise. Man didn't have to do anything except just work the crops, He had to pick the fruit off but there was no work. It was all done for them. And all God said is just enjoy it, eat of any of the tree. But Adam and Eve didn't do that. Instead, they says, "Oh no, we can't deserve this. We have to work for it." So hundredfold is about rest. It's about living from the spirit versus the soul versus the body. And we'll actually get more into spirit, soul, and body and what those definitions are. And also in the middle, you'll see outer court, holy place, and holy of holies. That's talking about the temple or the tabernacle of God in the Old Testament. And we'll be digging into that in a few studies later, but we'll get into that. But we are the temple of God. We are the dwelling place of God. He lives in us. And this kind of describes those locations. So ask yourself the question, how good is God? The way you answer that determines your yield. So each of these yields, they produce something, right? 30-fold, 60-fold, 100-fold. And I don't know about you, but I would prefer to live a 100-fold life where I'm bearing more fruit in my life and more rest and more peace. So again, the way you answer that question, how good is God, will determine your yield. Okay, so that's our study for this morning. Any questions before I make the conclusion here?
No.
Okay, all right. So again, referring to our website, Renewing Your Mind Through Gratitude and Identity. So you can actually click on these, and these will take you to our website, which you can find these challenges. I again would suggest starting with the 21 days of gratitude because that is the foundation. Please continue on the 10 truths and memorizing these and putting these into your life. These will get you through those difficult times and help you on your journey. So next week we're going to be talking about seed and shine. So we completed seed in the soil. Next week we're going to talk about the seed and shine. And then after that we're going to do these studies, the 7 I am statements, the dwelling place of God. That's where we're going to be talking about the temple, freedom from religious bondage, and then living from the unseen. So these will take us through the next few months. And again, click on our website for more information. And of course, you can always join us on Facebook and be part of our membership. All right. With that said, I am done. Any final questions or comments?
You're a great teacher.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It's definitely a passion of mine. I love doing it. I love putting presentations together. God has definitely gifted me for that. So I'm just grateful for the opportunity to be able to share it and also to get the message out online. So thanks so much for joining, and we will see you online, and we will see you next week.
Bye.
All right. Bye for now.